Just like any big franchise, Dragon Ball has a lot of controversial sequels. Whether it's Dragon Ball GT, Super, or more recently Daima, no matter what, it seems Dragon Ball just can't get back to that same quality the original manga had. But it seems that Toei and the people in charge of Dragon Ball, they don't really care about the negative reception that much. I mean, they're still doing Dragon Ball Super after God knows how long, and recently they decided to revisit one of the most hated parts of the franchise, Dragon Ball GT, and sort of remade it. Kind of. It's not really a remake, but Daima definitely took a lot of ideas from it, and they share a ton of similarities. To me, this was kind of a bold move and a daring direction to take the franchise after the reception they got from it last time, but you know, I kind of respect it. So I wanted to take a look at which one of these two did the aspects they share in common best, starting with Goku. So as you all know, both of these two stories has Goku turn into a kid. Now this is a pretty big decision to make in a story, so you kind of have to justify it in some way. Obviously he's a kid again, so we can have more of an early Dragon Ball vibe, but we need to actually give it an effect on the story. And unfortunately, both Daima and GT fail terribly at this. For GT, Goku turning into a kid is never connected to the wider story at all. The reason they want to gather the Black Star Dragon Balls isn't to wish Goku back into an adult, it's to stop the Earth from exploding. And after that, they never try to turn him into an adult, and it becomes pretty transparent that the sole reason he's a kid is for nostalgia. I will say that there are some redeeming aspects though. At the start, it's revealed that Goku can't do the instant transmission in the kid form. This makes it so he can't just teleport from planet to planet. However, later in the story, when Goku awakens Super Saiyan 4, he can do the instant transmission again because he's in his adult form. This is really clever because Goku's kid form makes Super Saiyan 4's importance and utility much more prominent. In Dragon Ball Super, most of the transformations there don't serve any purpose other than giving the characters a power boost, like Super Saiyan Blue. It's basically just Super Saiyan God, but stronger and blue. Pretty much the only one that does something like that is Ultra Instinct. In GT, Super Saiyan 4 isn't just a new Super Saiyan transformation, it actually gives us access to an ability we otherwise couldn't use, and Goku does make full use of it, and gets saved by it several times. Tying the different mechanics together like this makes the story much more engaging. And the second thing I like about Goku becoming a kid is this.
ほらこのままで大丈夫だ。オラより地球の方が大事だ。それよりパン、早くドラゴンボール渡せ。
Maybe I'm wrong, but I really feel like this is in character for Goku. He doesn't care about appearances, he just wants to train, fight, and protect his friends, and so him being a kid is just something he accepts. Just like after he sacrificed himself in the Cell Saga, him being dead is just something he accepted and was fine with. He figured that the Earth would find peace if he wasn't there because he attracted the bad guys. And so here, again, he's fine with staying a kid so that the Earth doesn't explode from the Black Star Dragon Balls. Now Daima is actually pretty similar to GT in this aspect. Daima's Goku also can't use instant transmission when turned into a kid, and weirdly enough, he doesn't even use it after he's been turned into an adult, which feels like a strangely missed opportunity. But Daima Goku does have a huge advantage over GT in this category, which is that Goku being a kid is integral for the story to work. Sort of. Because instead of Pilaf accidentally wishing for Goku to be a kid, here the villain purposefully turns Goku into one, and Goku and the gang's goal is to gather the Dragon Balls to become adults again. This is very good. On paper. The issue is that the goal isn't just to turn the gang back into adults, it's also to save Dende. In fact, even if they were adults, they still would have had to embark on this journey to save Dende. Meaning, well, there really isn't any point in Goku being a kid aside from, again, nostalgia. Goku doesn't even become weaker from being a kid. Here's a clip from Kid Super Saiyan 4 Goku vs Goma, and here's adult. See any difference? What I think Daima did very well though is that in the Tamagami fight and at times during the Goma fight, Goku's small body is taken advantage of by the animators to the point where if Goku had been an adult here, the fight would have looked completely different. There's also a question of which of the two acts more like Goku. I think both of them honestly have a very similar approach on how Goku is characterized, with Goku acting like a kid a lot of the times, but can very quickly switch into the serious Goku we know. And so I don't really think one excels over the other in this regard. So I'm not gonna lie, picking between these two is pretty hard because they both fail so hard at this, but I think I'm gonna go with GT. I feel like Goku just works a bit better there. When it comes to any new Dragon Ball story, one of the most important aspects to me are the Dragon Balls themselves. I mean, that is the title of the story, after all. I think in recent times, their role in the story has honestly been pretty poor compared to what they used to, so where did they get best utilized here? A big praise I can give GT is how much the Dragon Balls are linked to the story, except for this arc, and I think the way they get utilized at first is kinda good, but also has a lot of bad elements. It starts off immediately with the Black Star Dragon Balls. Now, I don't like this because what the fuck is the Black Star Dragon Balls? We have never heard about these ever. They have never been foreshadowed, but all of a sudden they existed this whole time. Okay. Sure. However, how they get utilized in the story I think is actually very good, because it does exactly what Toriyama did in the original manga. In early Dragon Ball, after the tournament where Goku beats Piccolo, Earth had sort of been completed. All enemies were defeated, all masters had been surpassed, Goku had won the world tournament, and the Dragon Balls were easy to acquire. And so what Toriyama did to solve this issue was to move the story away from Earth and to a different planet that had their own Dragon Balls. This was a genius move from him for various reasons, as it allows the story to keep focusing on the Dragon Balls but with an unfamiliar world. And so GT basically does this exact same thing but takes it another step up by scattering the Dragon Balls not just to one planet but throughout the whole universe. The only issue is that the way we gather them is 6 out of 7 times really whack and not that rewarding or interesting. The same goes for the Shadow Dragon arc. I do really like the idea of the Dragon Balls getting overused, as it adds a consequence to how low the stakes had been as the story had gone on, but the way we have to defeat every single dragon is so boring.
Wait.
All of these guys are so whack, man. The only one I like is Nova Shenron, who is legitimately pretty good, but even Omega Shenron is just so bland and generic. And so again, the way we actually acquire the Dragon Balls is just not very fun. As for Daima, I think it also solves this in a very clever way. As we moved from Earth to Namek to gather their Dragon Balls, there was a clear contrast between the hunt this time compared to the Pilaf arc. The Pilaf saga heavily focused on adventure and humor, but as the series progressed there was more and more of a focus on action and fighting, so when gathering the Dragon Balls on Namek, we have to obtain them through fighting strong opponents. And this is exactly what Daima does. While there is a lot of adventure and exploration, we ultimately obtain the Dragon Balls through fighting the Tamagami. And this is a great way of combining the action of C and the adventure of early Dragon Ball. GT kinda did this too with the Shadow Dragon, so credit for GT for that, but again, the execution really lacked. As for Daima, it mostly lands, but there are definitely a few issues. One area where I think it massively improved over GT is in its choice to only have 3 Dragon Balls instead of 7. This makes the story much less formulaic and repetitive. That being said though, it definitely puts more pressure on Daima to make the 3 fights amazing. And unfortunately, they're not. Vegeta vs Tamagami 2 is just an awful fight, and is my opinion just as bad as some of the Shadow Dragon fights, and that's a pretty big blow to Daima. But luckily, the other 2 are really solid, and also shakes up the format by introducing a third party that is also gathering the Dragon Balls just like it did on Namek. Honestly, it's very difficult, because I think GT had better ideas than Daima, but just executed them awfully. Like, really awfully. So I think I'm gonna have to go with Daima, because even though it's not perfect, there really isn't too much to complain about. So as soon as Super Saiyan 4 happened in Daima, people immediately started comparing it to GT's version of it. Now, I want to compare not just the design, but also how they work in the story. For the design, when I saw the Daima one, I immediately thought that it didn't look as good as GT's. I really prefer GT's black hair as it contrasted so well with the red fur, and just in general, I liked it better. But the more time I spent with the Daima one, the more my perspective changed. First of all, the GT Super Saiyan 4, why is the fur red? Like, actually, why? What's the reason? Because Goku's hair isn't red, it's black. Why on earth wouldn't these match up? And where did the red even come from? And now that I'm thinking about it, the red isn't really even red, it's almost pink. Then you look at Daima's Crimson Red, which looks so sick. But it does also have these goofy ass wrists where the fur doesn't go all the way for some reason.
This ain't
But possibly the best part of the Daima designs are the big hands and arms. This makes the design more monkey-like, which also fits in with the way he fights in that form. I don't think the Daima design is perfect, but honestly I think I'm at a point where I genuinely like it more than the original GT one, even if there are a few things that one does better. But if we take a look at how the transformations are actually implemented in the story, it's not close at all, because I hate the way Goku attains Super Saiyan 4 in Daima. Neva literally walks up to Goku, doesn't say a word, and just gives him the transformation out of nowhere. It wasn't foreshadowed, it wasn't earned, it was just forcefully given.
I did some serious training after that. Wasn't sure I'd actually be able to pull it off though.
You are lying. I don't believe you, because you have never talked about it before and we have never seen you try to awaken it. On the other hand, I actually think the way he gets Super Saiyan 4 in GT is very good. Goku is going berserk in the Osaru form, a state that he's never been able to control. But with the help of his granddaughter Pan, he's able to finally gain full control of himself and transforms into Super Saiyan 4. Not only does this utilize previously established mechanics in Dragon Ball, but it also ties so well into the themes of the Baby arc. Baby hates the Saiyans so much that he lets that hatred consume him completely and even becomes a Saiyan. Goku, on the other hand, owns his power and identity. The Osaru form represents everything Baby hates about the Saiyans, pure uncontrolled power and destruction. And for Goku, it kinda does too. I mean, he killed his own grandpa because of it. But this time, Goku gains control of it instead of letting it control him. And the Super Saiyan 4 form represents exactly that. This is why it has the black hair, because that's the Saiyan's actual original hair color. Goku is tapping into the truest form of the Saiyans. It's a design that has to look like it does specifically for this arc. In Daima, why does Super Saiyan 4 look like it does? Does Daima have anything to do with the Saiyans or monkeys? The only reason it looks the way it does is because that's how it looked like in Dragon Ball GT, a filler anime that came out over 20 years ago. It could have had a completely different design and nothing would be lost. I like Super Saiyan 4, I like that they wanted to include it in Daima, but why couldn't you have actually found a legitimately good reason to put it in the story, instead of just because it looks cool? Honestly, if they just dropped the whole Never Awaken Super Saiyan 4 thing, and instead we don't have Goku transform into it until his final fight between Goma, as he's showing off all of his transformations, I think that would have been way more fulfilling. It still wouldn't have been foreshadowed, but at least now it will feel more intentional. Like, the reason he couldn't go Super Saiyan 4 before this was because he was in his kid form, but now that he's an adult, he can just about do it. It would effectively be almost the same as when he shows off Super Saiyan 3 for the first time. And so even though I slightly prefer Daima's design, I'm easily gonna have to give this category to GT. When it comes to the villains, man,
this nigga is trash.
So here's the issue. Daima has an average villain, a below average villain, and one of the worst villains I have ever seen in my whole life. GT, on the other hand, has one of the worst villains I have ever seen in my life, a bunch of awful villains, a truly terrible one, a bunch of awful ones, one below average one, and one legitimately good one. How I'm supposed to pick the winner out of these two, I have no idea, because they're both awful in this category. I think GT has a lot more bad villains than Daima, but GT is also 3 times as long, so that only makes sense. So instead, what I'll do is I'll take the single best villain from both and decide which I like best. In Daima, the only one I can really pick is Goma. Again, Degasu is genuinely one of the worst characters I have ever seen in my life, and Dr. Aransu, like, isn't really a villain, kind of, sort of. There really isn't too many villains in Daima to begin with, so I think Goma only makes sense. And unfortunately, Goma is a pretty bad villain, meaning GT wins this category with Baby. I really dislike every other villain in this show, but man, Baby is legitimately so good. I think one of the coolest ideas in all of Dragon Ball comes via Baby, which is the way he slowly takes over our heroes on Earth and fights his way up to stronger and stronger opponents. All of this before Goku, Trunks, and Pan can even get back to the planet. So when they come back, everyone has been possessed by Baby and he controls the whole planet. This creates some amazing dramatic irony, as we the audience knows exactly what has happened to our friends, but but Goku doesn't. And it also gives all of these side characters chances to shine. Like Goten in the beginning of this arc is just amazing. Seeing him go from such a likable character to being taken over by Baby is so sad. I just love this ability from Baby because it's the most unique power a villain has had in Dragon Ball up to this point. And it's actually integrated into the story and previously established mechanics so well, like the way his power doesn't work on Buu, or the way the sacred water is his weakness. He himself even utilizes established mechanics introduced in GT, most notably the Black Star Dragon Balls. After Goku and the others bring them back to Earth, he immediately uses them to wish for his own planet to be restored, which causes the Earth to blow up because the Dragon Balls aren't returned to Earth a year after their use. This is such an amazing way to use the Black Star Dragon Balls from the previous arc, to the point where it almost feels like they were created specifically for this purpose. And it's also just badass as hell. Like, I just love the degree to which Baby actually succeeds with his plans. And you know what else is badass? The way he just keeps Bulma as his wife. Like, damn, that is just some next level disrespect. He's not a perfect villain at all, but I think he's miles better than Goma, so again, GT wins this one. What these two stories both wanted to do was focus on adventure and have a more lighthearted tone, kinda like early Dragon Ball and the Pilaf saga. And as someone that is a huge fan of early Dragon Ball, this is great for me. But also, these two stories are very bad at adventure. Or maybe they're not bad, but they definitely aren't as good as they should, and certainly not as good as something like the Pilaf saga in this aspect. For GT, we have a bunch of random one-off episodes that just kind of don't really work, except for maybe one or two, and then all of a sudden we're just kind of transitioning into this space sci-fi arc where we fight this robot and the main villain is this dude that's into kids. What? You see, as they were making the beginning episodes, they very quickly realized that the adventure format would get boring pretty fast, and so they had to come up with something that was more akin to C and focused on action, and so they effectively abandoned the adventure story completely. Daima, on the other hand, does at least stick to the adventure story all the way until we reach the final villain. It still doesn't do it particularly well, but I think it's a decent bit better than GT, especially so because it actually has good comedy. GT can be funny at times, but it's not very often, and a lot of times it's just annoying in an attempt to being funny, and comedy is one of the most crucial aspects of these types of arcs. So again, I think Daima definitely wins this one. So I guess I can't talk about Dragon Ball without talking about action. I mean, for a lot of people, that's the only thing that matters to them about Dragon Ball. And between the two, I think it should be pretty obvious who wins. You see, Dragon Ball GT's animation is not particularly great. I think GT has some very solid art direction and color choice, coupled with some solid art a lot of the time, but man, the animation is so stiff and just bad. It does have good animation here and there, like Goten vs Vegeta for example looks amazing and it's just so well animated, directed, just... But stuff like this basically never happens. Like, look at this, man, this shit is buns. Compare this to Daima, which looks absolutely peak every single episode. And the narrative behind the fights in GT are almost always terrible too. Like when Goku is fighting Super 17. What is the story between Goku and Super 17?
Absolutely nothing.
I think Daima also has this issue at times. Like I said earlier that I think the Vegeta versus Tamagami fight is terrible and so boring because Tamagami 2 is just such a non-character. I don't even like the two Super Saiyan 4 Goku versus Goma fights, not just because Goma is such a mid-character, but because the choreography is so repetitive and uninspired. But even then, I'd much rather watch that than whatever the hell this is.
What the hell?
And Daima does have amazing action, like Vegeta vs Goma, Goku vs Tamagami 3, and pretty much every time Goku beats the absolute hell out of a soldier or random thug. The one thing I can give Dragon Ball GT credit for though in this aspect is something I think it does better than any other Dragon Ball project, which is how it uses its environments in its fights and how it integrates them through action. Like for example Goku vs Nova Shenron, Goku keeps running away from him while using the environment to hide or use diversion to to launch a surprise attack. Similar stuff happens when he fights Omega Shenron. Or when Goku fights General Rill though, his ability is directly tied to the environment and the way he can merge with it and stuff. Like a weirdly strange amount of detail went into this aspect and it's really appreciated. It makes the fights a lot more memorable. I mean, I can still remember exactly how Nova Shenron's footsteps sounds. Dragon Ball is known for characters fighting in open, empty wastelands. The only time I can really think of something similar to this happening in the original manga off the top of my head is when Goku shoots 2 Kamehamehas at Frieza from underwater. But this really switches it up and in some ways improves on that aspect. But again, I don't think I have to explain too much why Daima wins this one, meaning it is completely neck and neck, with both of them on 3 points. So, the most important category of them all, which had the better story? Dragon Ball Daima has a lot of issues. The villains are horrible and just kinda sit around doing nothing the whole story, making our confrontation with them so unengaging. The world building is rarely connected to the story or relevant for anything and has a lot of side characters that are either underbaked or just have no role in the story at all, to the point where they could have just stayed home and nothing would have changed. Dragon Ball GT on the other hand has obviously been hated for years, but I think it is a lot better than people give it credit for. They nailed the tone of Dragon Ball so it flows smoothly from the Buu saga. It has some great ideas, possibly the coolest Super Saiyan transformation, and maybe the best ending in all of Dragon Ball. But despite this, I think Dragon Ball Daima is better than Dragon Ball GT. Even though I think Daima fails at a lot of things and a lot of the core aspects of the show, I think the best parts of it are the aspects that you didn't expect to be good. Like Majin Ku and Du. I didn't even know they were gonna be in this story, but they turned out to be one of the best parts of it, especially Ku. Him becoming the Demon King at the end was just so perfect. Or the Gendarmerie Force. They get introduced out of nowhere at the end of the story, but their fight with Vegeta is hilarious and they're just a group of very likable characters. Like my favorite part in all of Dragon Ball Daima is this fucking Minotaur. A lot of the dialogue is super good and true to the characters, like Bulma and Vegeta's dialogue and honestly their relationship throughout the whole show. Most of the time you're watching GT, you're watching characters that don't develop or change, that find themselves in some incredibly contrived circumstances, fighting absolutely dogshit villains. Also, I think a lot of people just forget how bad the pacing in GT is. Like, this shit moves at a snail's pace. And once again, it's not even animated well. Daima's worst fights wins over GT's worst fight by default, because even Daima's worst fight looks amazing. GT's worst fight looks honestly not that much different from the rest of the fights. And one of the biggest parts where I think Daima triumphs over GT is the way that story and plot-wise, Daima actually feels like a continuation of the Buu saga. We've just been introduced to Bibbidi, Bobbidi, Buu, Dabura, Shin and Kibito, Elder Kai, and have fought Buu for a really long time. But when we start with GT, it immediately introduces some Dragon Balls we've never heard of before, makes Goku a kid, and now we're in space.
What the fuck is going on?
Daima, on the other hand, takes what was shown in the Buu saga and expands upon it. Finally, we get to go to the Demon World, which has been teased in the franchise for so long, and Kaioshin gets to go with us on the adventure because he was one of the newest side characters introduced. While Daima is far from perfect, it just works so much better than GT as a story. But again, Daima still has so many issues, so make sure to check out this video to hear what those are.